Imagine this. You're a genius. You revolutionized an industry while you were still in your 20s. You founded one of the most famous companies in the world. And then, one day, you walk into your office, and the people you hired, the board you created, tell you to leave. It wasn't a layoff. It was an expulsion. The ultimate act of betrayal. In 1985, Steve Jobs, the visionary co-founder of Apple, was officially fired from the company he built from scratch. This wasn't a minor setback. It was a devastating humiliation. But what if that public rejection, that moment of total failure, was the most important thing that ever happened to him? To understand his comeback, we have to look back at his beginnings. Steve Jobs was never afraid of the unconventional path. His life was defined by choices that made no sense at the time. After starting college at Reed College in 1972, he dropped out after just one semester. He had no idea what he wanted to do, and he couldn't see how standard requirements would help him figure it out. Yet he continued to live on campus, sleeping on floors, and auditing classes purely out of curiosity. One of the classes he audited was calligraphy. He was captivated by the ancient art form, studying beautiful typefaces and intricate design under Professor Lloyd Reynolds. Now imagine the situation. A college dropout spending his time studying beautiful lettering. Financially, professionally, this was useless knowledge. It was a bizarre detour. But years later, when he designed the Macintosh, he insisted on integrating that deep appreciation for typography, giving the Mac the elegant fonts that revolutionized personal computing. This is the first great lesson Jobs taught us. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. You have to trust that the dots, your current struggles, your random interest, your failed side projects, will somehow connect in your future. Apple's early success was meteoric. But success can hide cracks. Apple was a visionary, but he was also known for his difficult, autocratic management style. He pushed people too hard and burned bridges. As Apple grew, this uncompromising approach caused severe friction. Two new products, the Lisa and the Macintosh, failed to meet sales expectations, creating tension with the leadership he himself had brought in. The failure wasn't just commercial, it was a failure of leadership maturity. The board felt he wasn't ready to lead the massive company he had birthed. The subsequent clash with CEO John Sculley led directly to the ultimate corporate power play. He was forced out. Imagine the feeling. He had dedicated his entire being to Apple, only to be cast out by the very entity that embodied his dream. This was the dark night of his entrepreneurial soul. For a time, the failure was heavy, devastating. But in that moment of absolute loss, something shifted. The firing stripped away the ego, the need to defend his status as a successful corporate leader. Jobs realized that being fired was not a curse, but a gift. He would later reflect that getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to him. The immense heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again. That liberation was essential. The beginner's mindset meant he was no longer constrained by existing expectations or corporate politics. He was free to take huge risks and pursue visionary perfection regardless of immediate commercial viability. He now had the invaluable perspective of someone who had nothing left to lose. Jobs didn't disappear. He channeled his energy immediately into two new ventures. First, he founded Next, a computer company designed to build the next generation of computing machines. Jobs' standards were obsessively high. He demanded technical perfection and beautiful design, even going against convention, sometimes refusing to use cooling fans in his machines. This obsessive attention to form and function led to a critical short-term failure. The Next machines were high-end, powerful, and prohibitively expensive. Commercially, they struggled, selling only tiny numbers compared to Apple's products. Next was, by conventional metrics, a commercial disaster. But this commercial failure paid for a technological triumph. While the hardware languished, the software Jobs forced his engineers to build was revolutionary. Next developed the Next Step operating system. This object-oriented, powerful OS was so far ahead of its time that its foundation became critical to the entire digital landscape. The essential takeaway here is that failure is often a mislabeling of misplaced success. Next failed because Jobs prioritized long-term technical perfection over short-term sales success. His unrelenting demand for engineering purity, which bankrupted the hardware side of the business, inadvertently created the most valuable operating system technology of the era. His second venture taught him strategic mastery, Pixar. Jobs bought the struggling computer graphics division and patiently nurtured it. Pixar was not an immediate hit. It required years of funding and patience. Pixar didn't just teach him about filmmaking, it taught him how to manage creative talent, how to sustain a long-term vision, and how to operate in the content industry. This venture refined his corporate governance skills. When Disney acquired Pixar in 2006 for $7.4 billion, it was a massive strategic win. The deal made Jobs the largest individual shareholder of Disney, placing him on the board and giving him immense corporate influence. He had successfully leveraged his exile to gain profound experience in both foundational technology, Next, and creative corporate strategy, Pixar. By the mid-1990s, Apple was adrift and desperately needed a modern, stable operating system to replace its aging software. The dots were about to connect. Apple's search led them to the only viable technology, the operating system Jobs had created during his exile. In 1996, Apple acquired Next. They acquired Next Step, the software created in the shadow of commercial failure, which would form the technical foundation for macOS X, now macOS, and eventually iOS. And critically, the deal included bringing Steve Jobs back to the company that had rejected him. The failure was ultimately vindicated. The company that threw him out was forced to buy back his vision. Everything he'd learned, the sense of elegance from that forgotten calligraphy class, the ruthless engineering perfection from Next, and the corporate maturity gained at Pixar converged. He immediately focused Apple on simplicity and design, concepts honed during his deep exploration of Buddhism and design aesthetics. This led to a stunning chain of breakthroughs: the iMac, the iPod, which redefined the music consumer market, and finally, the iPhone. Jobs' exile didn't just save his career. It provided the specific, highly polished technological base and the necessary strategic wisdom required to build the most influential products of the 21st century. So, what does this epic comeback mean for you, watching this right now? Jobs' life offers powerful, actionable lessons on transforming setbacks into strategic assets. Lesson 1. Let curiosity be your compass. Jobs audited calligraphy not for a grade, but because he was interested. Your random, seemingly useless passions are not distractions. They are the future DNA of your unique contribution. Stop trying to follow dogma, the results of other people's thinking. Let your curiosity guide you. Trust that those detours, those things you stumble into, will turn out to be priceless later. Lesson 2. Treat failure as tuition. The firing was a profound loss, but Jobs immediately reframed it as a professional liberation. When you experience a setback, do not label it a defeat. Instead, view it as an extremely expensive, high-level course required for the next phase of your development. The commercial failure of Next was simply the tuition fee required to engineer the technology that would save Apple years later. The loss of success can give you the precious lightness of being a beginner again. Lesson 3. Have the courage to follow your inner voice. The greatest struggle is the fight against normalcy. Jobs refused to let the noise of others' opinions drown out his own intuition. His uncompromising vision led to failures like Next's hardware, but also secured the non-negotiable foundations for his greatest successes. Have the courage to follow your heart. It knows what you truly want to become. Jobs' final advice to the world was simple yet profound. Stay hungry, stay foolish. Be hungry for creation, for challenging the status quo, and for growth. And be foolish enough to believe in the dots that no one else can see right now. Look at your current frustration, your rejection, your seemingly aimless project. That is a dot. Do not try to connect it today. Just trust that in the future, when you look backwards, you will see how it all linked up. Go out there, be hungry, be foolish, and start building your next necessary failure.